Alright, so this is the part of the day where we break down our three-phase cueing model. So if you ever come to another certification for a Beachbody Live format, you're going to get the same information. We've streamlined this to make it easy for you to be successful when you're cueing your classes. We've got three phases. Your first phase is your introduction phase, introduce. So this is when you name the move, and you're going to tell the direction, the timing, safety, other options, and the rhythm of the move. So just as an example, let's use the twist. So you're in your ready stance, your guard's up. I generally cue twist as a right, left, right, knee. Right, left, right, knee. So you want to make sure you're cueing the correct hands so they know which fist to punch with first. You're telling them the name of the move, which is a twist, so you just say twist, and then you show it. So they've demonstrated, they've seen it, and they can redo what you're doing there. You want to make sure you're all going in the same direction, so if you're all going to the front, you're cueing to the front. If, for example, the cue is to the side as well, sometimes you'll find the twist goes to the front and the side. You say twist front, twist side. You got to make sure you're being very clear and concise with them, especially in this first phase, so that they can clearly do the move without being confused. You also want to do timing, so that means you're starting on the downbeat. You want to keep with the rhythm of the music, and also safety. A really nice one here, especially with the twist, is when you're dropping that back knee, you want to make sure it doesn't go down too low. Another example I like to use, and I see frequently in classes, is when we're doing crosses. Sometimes people keep their feet planted on the floor, and you want to make sure that they're pivoting so they don't torque their knees and they're keeping safe in their joints. Super important there. You also want to give options. So this is also where you give different modifications. For example, if we're doing burpees and you have a couple of your students that aren't ready for a burpee, maybe they have joint issues and they can't quite go down to the floor, show the move first. That's what I usually do, is show the full out move first and then show the modifications. I don't generally use the word modification often in class at all. I sometimes feel like it has a bit of a negative connotation. So I always say another option is, which is something to think about when you're teaching your classes. So going back to burpees, for example, you do your normal burpee. We all know what those look like. Other options I give are double squats, or we can do the squat lunge, which is another nice option as well. Squat, lunge, squat, and lift. And of course, if you're doing that in a class, you want to make sure that you keep it even so that they do the other side. That way they're not walking funny after your class. You want to work all of the muscles in the body. And of course, rhythm. You want to make sure you're on the rhythm with the music so that we talked about earlier today in musicality, where you want to make sure you're on that downbeat so that things match up correctly when you're moving into whatever the second layer or third layer or fourth layer is throughout the class. Always start phase one. You always want to introduce the move first. Once this has happened, you can move on to phase two, which is improve. So, example, going back to the twist. Starting out, not everybody's going to be doing it full on. A way for them to improve is to step forward a little bit further with their front leg and really drop down their back leg. I like to say, almost let your knee kiss the floor. You're coming down low. The twist is a nice move because it's not only a punch move, but it also is a lower body move. You're getting a lot of, it's a lunge. You're coming down into that lunge, which is exactly what we're talking about here. Exercise benefits. It's a leg move. You're working your quadriceps. You're getting down low in your hamstrings. You want to make sure also things about how to do it better. Getting down low, progressions, regressions, how can you make it better? How can you take this move to the next level? Just making it bigger. That's a great way to do that as well. Your feel and style. This sometimes comes into the move if we're doing more like a dance class, like Size Live, that sort of thing. Progressions, regressions, great. So you'll swap in between these two phases a lot before you move on to the third phase, which is inspire. This is when you get to add your own personality and flair. You challenge your students, tell them to make it bigger, get even lower, encourage them. Yeah, you're doing great, that kind of stuff. Motivational things to say, Just keep in mind, you're all here for a reason. You chose to come to TurboKick today instead of sitting on the couch and watching Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, that kind of stuff. Congratulate them. This is the point where when we get into that 3-phase cueing where I really like to call out students specifically by their name and say, hey, Dusty, you're doing a great job with the lunch today, or your twists look awesome today, or oh my gosh, how high did you get on that tuck jump? That was amazing, that sort of thing. And you can also give them different options as well in the 3rd phase there. As you can see, we've got these kind of in a circle, so you want to go from phase 1 to phase 2, and then to phase 3. Sometimes you're going to go back to phase 2, and sometimes you'll go all the way back to the introduced phase as well. As you're cueing throughout, you want to make sure you're still continuing to cue the moves correctly, meaning you're saying the names. Find shortened versions of those so that you're not verbal diarrhea and you're talking so much that you don't get out the whole cue. Generally, when I'm teaching TurboKick, the right side, the first side that we do, I tend to stay in this phase 1 and phase 2. By the time we get to the second side on the left side, they've already seen the moves. Your first couple of 32 counts are going to be in phase 1 and 2, and then by halfway through that part of the section when you're on the left side, your students should be pretty familiar at that point, and then you move into phase 3. That's just one example. Usually in the beginning of classes as well, I'm staying in the phase 1 and phase 2, especially when you're introducing a new round. They're not always going to know the moves. You're going to have to repeat things several times for your students to really catch on. As you've been teaching your routine for quite some time, you may start from phase 1, do a little bit of phase 2, and predominantly stay in phase 3. It's all a progression. You have to fill out your class, how comfortable have they been with the movements, and so forth. I also really like to make sure I'm staying, or at least get to phase 3, even if it's a new round, by the end of class, especially during the finale section, when your students are starting to get tired, they're getting winded, they know that's the end of class, and that's when their energy starts to die down. But you as the instructor, it's your responsibility to ramp up your energy so that they match you. I will say this, every time you teach, you can give 110% and your students are always going to give 80. You can give 150% and your students are always going to give maybe 90. They're not always going to match your energy entirely and to the T. They're always going to be just a little bit under. So, as an instructor, you've got to make sure that you are giving 100 and a million%. Like, give your absolute best so that your students do the same. They will match your energy depending on what level it is. If you're all the way down here, they're going to be down here. If you're all the way up here, they're going to be up here. So you've really got to keep that energy high. And that's where phase 3 comes into play. So now that we've kind of introduced what the 3-phase cueing model is, this is the point where we get to practice. Hope you're excited.